There is an old quote from Jeff Van Gundy that Rick Brunson carries with him and shared with his son many years ago. Jalen Brunson, a junior at Villanova, says the quote is in his locker. It reads, "When most people talk about talent, they are simply talking about athleticism, meaning speed, quickness, jumping, size and strength. This isn't a track meet. Other things matter. Skill level is a talent. Intelligence is a talent. Decision-making is a talent. Toughness, both mentally and physically, is a talent. Energy and intensity are talents. Forget about talent. Let's focus on production and consistency." That was Rick Brunson's mantra as he was fighting and scratching to keep his NBA dream alive. That dream included a few memorable years in New York. Jalen was a frequent visitor to the Knicks locker room during the team's run to the 1999 NBA Finals and their return trip to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2000. "I was young, but I remember Latrell Sprewell, Larry Johnson and Allen Houston," Jalen says. The younger Brunson has been connected to the NBA his entire life. When Rick played and eventually coached in Chicago, Jalen would train at the Bulls practice facility where he got to know Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah. Last week, when Villanova beat Gonzaga at the Garden, it was homecoming of sorts for Brunson. Because of the Big East tournament and games against St. John's, Brunson regularly visits the Garden as a player. Soon, he'll do it as a pro. Brunson is scheduled to graduate this summer, and although neither Rick nor Jalen is tipping their hands, there is a strong possibility that Jalen will enter the NBA draft. Kevin Seacock's Jetty images Rick Brunson went undrafted and says that is one of many differences between the two left-handed point guards whose games are not similar at all according to Rick. "Man, everyone gets that one wrong," says Brunson, now an assistant coach with the Minnesota Timberwolves. "I couldn't shoot. Let's be honest here. He's much more athletic than I was. He's a better offensive player. Jalen had plenty of dunks in high school. I've had 3 dunks in my entire life." The Van Gundy quote applies more to the father than the son. Rick played for 8 teams over NBA 9 seasons, following brief stints in Australia and the CBA. He survived a long time despite having just one guaranteed contract. He was a role player, a guy at the end of the bench always try to prove he belongs. Jalen's journey is slightly different with a much higher ceiling. As a freshman he was the starting point guard for a national championship team. Now in his 3rd year, Brunson has Villanova among the nation's top programs this season. "The kid is an NBA player," says one league executive. "Too often we're in love with guys who can run like a deer. I love the guys who are winners. He's a little bit like Derek Fisher and Jameer Nelson to me. He knows how to run a team. And he knows how to win." Catafo, Linda, those are the talents Van Gundy, whom Rick played for, is referring to. That's why Rick wanted his son to have that quote to keep him humble and focused on what really matters. Rick, who played for John Chaney at Temple, understands the importance of great coaching. Van Gundy's coaching staff in the late 90s included 2 former NBA head coaches, Brendan Malone and Don Chaney, and 2 future NBA head coaches, Tom Thibodeau and Steve Clifford. When Jalen was being recruited, Rick advised his son to at least consider Villanova and Michigan State because of Jay Wright and Tom Izzo respectively. "All I want is for my son to be happy," Rick says. "If he's happy, my wife and I are happy. He always tells me he's glad he made the decision to attend Villanova. He loves the school and he loves the program. No regrets." If Jalen does indeed enter the draft, there is a possibility that he could be selected by the Timberwolves. That's a scenario Rick never considered, but it's one that would allow Rick to do something that Lavar Ball craves, a chance to coach his son in the NBA. "I haven't even thought about that," Rick says. "I've trained my son but I've never coached him. I don't know if I could do that. I think I'd have to move into scouting or into the front office. I could quit in just all of his games. That wouldn't be so bad." Robert Sabo, New York Daily News. Thanks, but no tanks. To tank or not to tank? That is the question Knicks general manager Scott Perry thinks is crazy to ask. In his State of the Knicks address on Saturday, Perry said that when trying to build a culture, the last thing you do is to create an environment where you institutionalize losing. "I think it's very important if you're playing meaningful basketball late into the season, just for again, the culture which you're trying to build here," Perry said. I would also say wherever we end up in the draft, whether it's on the playoffs side or the lottery side, whatever, I have extreme confidence in our scouting staff and our front office staff that we're going to add some talented players to the mix here. But I just believe that it's important to compete hard, do the very best that you can, and then organically let that happen. The amount of wins and losses come out of that versus trying to put your team in a position not to win. I don't think that's healthy for any culture. I think if you try to, quote-unquote, institutionalize losing, if you will, that's hard to get out of your building. You may never get that out of your building. We just want to do the very best we can and well live with the results. The Knicks are on pace to win 30-plus games. And even though their schedule is about to get much tougher, it's unlikely they'll fall below Atlanta and Chicago. Plus, out west Dallas, Phoenix, Sacramento and Memphis will all struggle to win 30 games. Speaking of winning cultures, the San Antonio Spurs entered Saturday with an 188 record, and Kawhi Leonard, who is scheduled to return on Tuesday, has yet to play a game. Only the Golden State Warriors could post that type of record without having their best player for a single game. If you think the Knicks are better off without Carmelo Anthony, take a look at the Indiana Pacers without Paul George. Madison Square Garden has hosted countless big events over the years. But Tuesday will be different. Lonzo and Lavar Ball make their MSG debuts.